Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Chapel Central School District Board of Education on Wednesday, March 27th at, we're running a little late. It's at, can't even see the second here, 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. We've been in executive session seeking legal advice since 6 p.m. this evening. Do I have a motion to bring us back to public session?
I move that we return to public session.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Jane Shepherdson?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. This is our BOCES.
They're on the agenda. They're 5, 3 through 5, 7.
All right, so for our president's report tonight, the first thing we're going to discuss, or we're going to move, is we have a number of grants, traditional grants from Chapel School Foundation. So we'd like to take those first. And those are items 5.3, 5.4, 5.5, 5.6, 5.7, and 5.7. So can I have a motion to take items 5.3 through 5.7?
I so move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Can we like discussion, please? So item 5,
No,
I'll just read them. Item 5.3 is a grant for multimedia art production, the amount of $53,360.38. Item 5.4 is a traditional gift for Jacob Burns Sound Story Program for an amount of $40,530. 5.5 is for $49,560 for Grafflin Greenhouse Program. 5.6 is $24,480 for STEAM Augmented and Virtual Reality. And 5.7 is for $24,281 for Promoting Innovation Engagement in Math Class.
Warren, may I?
Yes, you may.
I think Jillian and Leslie, did you want to come up and talk a little bit about it? Is it
offer
okay?
that
No, it's okay. We had talked about this awful lot. I forgot to mention it to you.
Yes.
So.
Thank you. My name is Jillian Foley, and I'm the president of the Chapel School Foundation. Before Leslie talks, I just wanted to take a minute to thank Christine and Adam and Josh and Joe and everyone in the district, the teachers, the principals, for supporting us and partnering with us on all of the grants that we, bring forth to you guys. But also we wanted to just thank the community, because without their support, we wouldn't be able to give you the grants we're about to present to you right now, which have already been presented, but that's okay. So anyway, I'll turn it to Leslie, our chair of grants.
Hi, I'm Leslie Kuhn. I'm the co-chair of the CSF Grants Committee. And tonight is always one of my favorite nights of the year and all of the work we do at CSF. We're really excited to put forth to you for your approval our 2019 slate of traditional grants. This year there are 5 grants totaling $195,221.38. While they're small in number, some years we have more, they're really big in terms of student impact and innovation. We have things that range from elementary student work with the Jacob Burns, which will really help kids learn about media literacy, and pairs very nicely with the Digital Learning Initiative that we were happy to support last year, to some exciting augmented reality and virtual reality work that'll happen in our soon-to-be open STEAM labs in both the middle and high school. We have a trio of things that will happen here at Greeley that touch both the art department as well as other departments in the school. Again, in terms of media literacy, both in terms of production, drawing, and filmmaking. We have a grant that will help bring the Grathland Greenhouse, which was constructed in 1979, to a real learning classroom that all students, K through 4, will be able to take advantage of with their teachers. And finally, we have a grant here at Greeley where 2 teachers will pioneer some ways to incorporate technology in partnership with you all, funding some new furniture to create a more engaging, interactive, and collaborative math learning environment. So thank you, as Jillian said, to all of you who helped work with us to make these possible, to the teachers and building administrators who come up with these great ideas. And we really hope you'll accept them all, and our kids can do great things.
Great. And before I let you go, also my notes I had, Friday, April 26th is the CSF grant at our gala dinner at Sleepy Hollow Country Club.
Yes.
So I encourage everyone to attend that because I've been going for years, and it's a wonderful event, and it helps provide to CSF money and financial help for our district anyway. So it goes, goes back.
And you get to see some grants in action at our
We get
grant
to see the
showcase.
grants in action. We get to hear music from the Doc's Jazz Ensemble, and it's just a wonderful evening. Get to see friends from the community who you might not normally see all the time.
Right, it's always a lovely evening.
And we know Fran has a lot of great auction items, as always.
Oh yeah, wonderful auction items. So please, if you're free on, I'm letting you know early, Friday, April 26th.
Right,
So
you should
I-
have gotten your invitation in the mail.
I got
We
my
did.
invitation 2
We
days
got our
ago.
invitations.
And I'd also want to say, just as CSF liaison, as someone who's come to your board meetings and listened to, I just want to stress how much, how supportive this entire CSF board is of our school district, and all of the teachers that ask for grants, and how much work you put into all of the grants, all of the individual grants. And there's always some very thoughtful discussion, and I'm always struck by how very supportive of the individual teachers you are. And
Some great teachers.
there's a lot of work that goes into these grants, and a lot of thoughtfulness. So I just want to thank you for all the time you've put into this.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you very much. We
Thank
really,
you.
it's near and dear to my heart, having worked with you guys on CSF for many years. And it was a thrill, really, to read through the grant proposals, and also how specific the teachers are, how they've tested this out, how they've really thought about a long-range plan for how all of these things will work and get integrated into our existing programs, into new programs. Since I had it in PDF form, I could not link to the augmented and virtual reality thing that looked super cool, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. But you could tell all the work that's gone into it. So really, you guys did a great job. Just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you. So,
Okay.
hold on. We have a motion on the table. It's been seconded. We have a discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
So I'd like to say on behalf of the district, that there is a tremendous amount of time that goes into all the work that the foundation does with us. And we can't thank you enough for making our school so much better for our kids and allowing us to innovate in ways that we wouldn't be able to due to the constraints of our budget. So great partners for us, and we really appreciate it. I think I speak on behalf of all of us who work with you, so thank you.
I'd add too that this is during budget season. I don't think as many people appreciate that you really do alleviate parts of the budget, and we really do appreciate that. And the taxpayers,
Not only
On behalf of the taxpayer.
augment the budget.
okay, either way, on behalf of the taxpayers who aren't paying but are donating, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next, we received a note from David Buckwald. He's hosting the orchestra and band at the Empire State Plaza. We're waiting for the state budget to come out still on April 1st, I guess it is. And there have been a lot of articles in the paper talking about tax cap being permanent. I know the governor's looking at that. That could be a good thing. Again, I'm concerned about a permanent tax cap with no relief from unfunded mandates, which tends to hurt all the districts. And I know a lot of districts have been up in Albany recently, around here, Ossining, New Rochelle, I think Peekskill, Yonkers, because they're upset by the permanence of the tax cap without unfunded mandates relief.
Yeah, and also I think people would like to see some some adjustments made to it. So for instance, there are districts that have negative caps, although I know that the caps can't go under, they stay at 0%, which is very harsh for a lot of districts, and I don't think that was ever really anticipated. And, people really believe that it's a 2% cap, but it really isn't a 2%. And so, the state itself allows itself a 2% annual growth, which is much more than they are allowing municipalities and school districts to have. And so the tax cap hasn't been tested in times where the CPI is over 2%. So we haven't experienced what that would be like yet. So I think to make the cap permanent without taking all of these variables into account really puts districts at risk. I mean, we want to keep taxes low, but we want to do it in a way that doesn't decimate school programs in the long run. So I think there's a real legitimate concern that it's being pushed
And
to be permanent
foundation,
without considering
the foundation aid formula is I would say unfair, but it hasn't been thought through all the way. It's sort of
Well, that's something that hasn't been implemented
but
as it should.
correct.
Right, but the tax cap is a whole other issue.
And you have-
So,
Where we're located, considering we're located in Lower Hudson, in the Hudson Valley, and we really should be considered part of New York City and Long Island for aid, not just our district, but this whole area. So there's a lot to be done, and I know the budget's getting pushed hard in one in different ways. Hopefully it doesn't affect our district and the other district around us. The last thing I sent everyone a note on was to start thinking about, we received a letter from the high school junior class, and they'd like us to consider changing graduation next year. And I'm not sure if everyone's had a chance to think about that or research that, but I'd like to have a little discussion on that right now. I can read the letter, but I think we all read it. Their concerns are that it's Father's Day and that people might not be able to attend. It might be easier if it was a day earlier. It was a very thoughtful letter that we received, and I think we should at least have a discussion. I left a message, I sent back a note to the student who sent us this, and I said the board would absolutely entertain the discussion.
I would like to see the administration come up with alternative solutions to a Father's Day graduation. I can't see any downside to changing graduation day to be on a day other than Father's Day. We're not preventing people from having Father's Day by not having graduation on Father's Day, and I don't think the original reason for having it on Father's Day exists anymore. I know that Jeffrey found some reason. I thought there were different reasons than the ones you found for having it on Father's Day, but I think the original reasons don't exist anymore. So I would be in favor of looking into a change. I think it's difficult for families because, you have extended families celebrating Father's Day. So it's not just the fathers of the graduates who are here, they're grandfathers as well. And we have our custodians working here, and they have to miss Father's Day. So I think for all of the staff that we like to have here, it's a hardship.
Right. They were the letter was very well written, and it was presented on behalf of student leadership and Laura Lynn Stewart, who's the assistant principal for that grade. And, we have certain traditions here that people love. They love to see that tent outside, and they want to see their students in caps and gowns, et cetera. And I don't know that this was necessarily a tradition more than an arbitrary date that was at some point picked that seemed to work in the schedule. But I'm very much in favor of looking at another date. I think they had suggested the Saturday, just the day before, and they did list a lot of compelling reasons for they would like the teachers to be able to attend, the custodians, et cetera, that have their own families to celebrate with. And we're talking about an event that should be family friendly. And the scheduling at 5 o'clock on a Sunday, on Father's Day, is not family friendly, I think, at all. If you have, it's not for the custodians and the teachers and administrators who want to be with their families, and the families of the graduates. Even if you have family coming in from out of town,
a 5 o'clock Sunday, again, not family-friendly, in my personal opinion. So if there was a compelling reason, I could see leaving it, but this is not really this is a tradition that is not really a tradition. It was a date assignment that was somewhat arbitrary to begin with, so I don't see the reason not to look into something that's actually just more convenient for the families.
Jeffrey?
Initially, I thought this was a quixotic crusade to change the day, but as I did some more research, I found that the only reason that I spoke to a former teacher, an administrator in the district, as well as a former board member, the person who had the seat that I'm sitting in before me, so she was at
That
least
was
13.
me last year.
Uh,
No, farther back.
We keep going back
Okay.
4 terms. They had the board member didn't know why it was done that way. The administrator felt that the only reason they could remember that it was always on Father's Day, but it had something to do, it had to be that weekend because of the test. So while not a lot of seniors take finals, there are some that do, and you need to have it after a certain number of finals to front load the senior finals in the first week, and assuming they passed, they could walk the gauntlet. But if not, they couldn't pass. So I think that there's certain reasons why you'd have it on maybe that weekend, but while I happen to like the tradition of Father's Day, I don't see any reason why it has to stay there.
Holly?
Yeah, so I don't have any historical context for why it's there or anything other than it just always has been. So from my perspective, it's their graduation, and this seems to mean a lot to them. So if we don't have a compelling reason not to honor the request, I would be inclined to do it.
Personally, traditions are hard and fast in school districts, especially high schools. I did a little research also. First, I found out that one of the reasons it was on Sunday instead of Saturday was because the prom was on Thursday or Friday.
I was about to say that the prom used to be then, and they would have to give the kids time to get back, etc., but they've since moved the prom.
Right, so since the prom was moved a week earlier, things always move around. Traditions are, I won't go into some of the reasons why I think it was Sunday versus Saturday, but the second thing is I spoke to 2 people who had graduated from here, one in the 60s and one in the 70s. My cousin was one of them. He probably won't like the fact that I'm mentioning him. But he said he doesn't remember his graduation being on Sunday night. He thought it was like on a Friday night. And prom was like the week earlier. So I think things might have changed a lot. And then the person who I spoke to who graduated in 79 said that their graduation was on Sunday. So it looks like if you go back far enough, things might have changed a little bit. So, again, I think we have to get some input from the administrators, and
Also, Warren, I think when we talk about this in terms of a tradition, I don't really think it's a tradition. I think a tradition is a practice that has meaning to a community. I don't think that having graduation on Father's Day is something that was
It's actually a
particularly
tradition.
meaningful to the community. I think it's something they were used to, but I think it's the graduation itself that's meaningful. I don't think anyone is invested in having it on Father's Day. So I personally don't consider it a tradition in that sense.
I think
of the
tradition is
word.
something that happens over a
it's
period of
something-
time.
Although it's shown that it has changed over the years, so
I think
it's
it's
so
changed. And it hasn't been,
it hasn't really been like a
Right.
40-year tradition of
Right.
having it on
Right.
Father's Day.
Well, if you go back to the 60s, it probably is 40 years, but I think things have changed through time, and maybe we could entertain this.
I'd like to look in the camera and tell my kids that if we do change it, there's no excuse for not being here on Father's Day now.
I would say that we completely support changing it, maybe for a different reason. Father's Day is difficult for some students, and we don't want them to have any kind of emotional difficulty on a day that they should be celebrating. So us changing this off of Father's Day would be welcomed.
Yeah.
So I'll give you some suggestions. We'd have to make a decision by mid-May. So I'll give you
Well,
options.
it would not be for this year.
No, it'd be for next year.
For
Right.
next
But the
year.
calendar, we have to prepare the calendar, so
Correct.
it would be for next year, but I think that this would be a welcome change, so I'll come up with
Yeah.
some suggestions for
Which
you.
I'd like to
as
thank
administration.
the student government from the high school for the junior class for bringing this up so early. Normally, we get requests to change things like a month before, and by that time, it's too late.
I
or a
think this
couple
is
months
something that has come up over the years.
It is.
It has been brought up, but I was very thankful that they really thought it through and they
And
put forth their
They gave it to
their
us over a year
list of
early.
reasonings and why it was important to them, and that was very much appreciated, so.
So,
You're going to be excited.
good.
Great.
So I
Okay.
don't think we have an answer tonight, but I
Nope.
think we're moving toward a direction.
Okay, that's great.
Okay?
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, so before John presents our budget presentation tonight, I just have
Bye, Rob.
two quick things. The first is STEM Fest was this past Saturday, and I know many of the administrators were able to attend. It was great to see our kids, particularly K-8, their projects. It was kind of messy. It was really innovative. Kids were excited to share with us their experiments, so that was great. It was a great experience for us. And then today we welcomed visitors from across Westchester to see our STEAM and global learning spaces. And it's so great that we're able to share our curriculum and our thinking with our colleagues across the region as they begin to explore whether or not it makes sense for them to support some of the same practices that we're using in Chappaqua. So,
Christine, were these visitors from other school districts?
yeah,
Or-
across
Oh, okay.
Westchester. Josh is actually partnering with another educator on innovation, and he's been having multiple meetings at BOCES, and then we hosted one of those meetings today. So Adam and Josh shared with them the work that we've been doing in this district. So great, right, Adam? Yeah. So now I'd like to introduce John Chow, who will be presenting our different components tonight
On his birthday eve.
on his birthday eve, tomorrow's birthday.
Another man who needs
I
no
don't
introduction.
celebrate birthday anymore. So, good evening.
Talking about your birthday. Yes, we're ready.
Okay.
So, happy birthday, John.
Thank you, thank you.
You don't look 70, John.
He's not, Jeff.
So, if you want to come, if you want to have pizza, just come to the S Center
We're having a
tomorrow.
pizza party tomorrow.
I thought you were going to Florida. Sorry.
Okay, good evening, and just want to welcome everyone to the budget marathon. Lisa just reminded me that we actually have 57 slides, and so we are actually going over two sections. The first section is the non-instructional budget and fund balance, and so the non-instructional budget represents about over 40% of our total budget, and that's the part that we're going to go over tonight. And also, the second part is the revenues and tax analysis and contingency budget. So there are two separate parts, and we go over this both of them. And also, the non-instructional budget is going to conclude all the presentation on the expenditure side. So this is the last presentation for the expenditure budget. And also, the budget that we're presenting tonight is slightly changed because at one of the meetings prior, we increased the budget by $113,000. That represents a 4-year lease for computers for the 7th and 8th grade. So we already incorporated that number into this budget, okay? So this is the proposed budget, and if you compare to the original superintendent's proposed budget, you will see this number, the $126,152,000 has increased $113,000. And the increase also increased, and the percentage increase, it was when we presented, it was 2.84, and now it's 2.93. And for the non-instructional budget, there are 4 parts. We have general support, transportation, community services, and undistributed. And so we'll start with the breakdown of the total budget. You have seen these slides before, so I'm not going to go through it line by line, but I think the key here is, the most important piece here is really the debt service, and we'll talk about it later. And the debt service has gone up close to 30%. And it was basically because of the $42 million that we borrowed, $42.5 million we borrowed for the bond that was approved in 2016. And this is the slides for the expenditures to represent the percentage of the total budget. And the key here is really for the personnel part, the salaries and the employee benefits. Basically, it still represent, right now, 73%. I think you remember several years ago it was about 75%. So it's still in that range, around 73, 70 to 75% of the total budget.
And we always say this every year, but it's the same for every district. It's
Yes,
not just our
and you know, when you really think about the business that we're in really as a service industry, and therefore most of the expenditures is going to be in the personnel part. So it's really salaries and the benefits. So we go over the general support. So now we're going to go through the details, and I'm just going to highlight them because I'm not going to go line by line. If you have any questions, just ask me. Under general support, these are the categories: Board of Education, Central Administration, Finance and Auditing, Legal Services and Human Resources and Public Information, Buildings and Grounds, and Operations and Maintenance. This is a particular piece that Joe Gramado has gone over last week. And the last part is the special items. So for the Board of Education, just for your information, the entire presentation is online because I'm not sure you can actually see all the numbers here because they are small. But you know, both the Board of Education, all the categories, basically the numbers haven't changed that much. There are some increases and some decreases. And then same with Central Administration. And then also the finance and auditing for the business office, the number basically is exactly it's exactly the same. And then for the auditing, I think the highlight I want to mention is the external auditor. This is really a placeholder. The reason is because we have an RFP out. So we are requesting for proposal for next year for the external auditor.
John, on the previous Board of Education slide,
Yes.
the 2018-19 approved versus the year-end projection, I think there's a mathematical error. If it went up by 2,000 in the first section and every other number stayed the same, then the total should be up by 2,000.
You mean the budget to budget?
I mean the approved versus the year-end projection, 18-19.
One is 13,000, one is 15,000. Is that what you're talking about?
Okay, yeah, that's up 2,000, right?
Uh-huh.
Now, the rest of the numbers on the district clerk level, district meeting, and the chief school administrator lines that remain the same for both budget and projected, and the totals should be $2,000 more.
Down here?
Yeah?
No, but this is only for the chief school administrator.
Oh.
Each
That's not a
category.
total for the page, that's a total for the section.
No, each part
never
is a
mind.
total for that.
Never mind.
Okay?
Yeah, just I think the way it formatted it just looked a little confusing.
Definitely confusing to me.
But if you have any questions, just ask. Also here, we are under the legal services, human resources, and public information. For legal services, also just for information, the first one is for our school district council, and we also have an RFP out, so we're looking for proposals for next year. And HR department and public information, basically the numbers are pretty similar. If you look at the public information, we have made a change, a very small change. We have a reduction in the printings because I think we're going to the electronic publishing. And the special items, people always ask me what is special items. So these are the categories. You know, you have insurance, you have judgment, and you have assessments, you have refund of real property taxes, and then you have BOCES, administrative services and capital services. I think I just want to mention a little bit about the last part with regarding the BOCES capital services. For the 2018-19 budget, we actually underestimated the number. Actually, it should be $41,723. That's why you see it here as the actual number. And then for next year, in their budget, which they released, was it today? And the capital services is $62,120. Of course, this has to be approved by the 18 component districts, but this is the number that is listed in their budget, and therefore that's what we are carrying here.
That's our share of the reserve they're setting up?
No, for capital, there are capital projects that they're going to go on for next year. That's our share.
So where's our share of the reserve that they're putting in there?
They're not putting in the reserve. They are putting in for capital projects. I don't think they can have reserves. They can have capital projects, but they cannot have reserves. That was the issue, that because they were never able to, because they have excess funds, they had to reimburse the school district.
Like they did a couple of years ago?
That was because they set aside a reserve that they were not allowed. They set aside reserve for TRS, and therefore they distributed all the funds back to the component districts. Okay, now we go to the transportation part.
Excuse me, John, I have some questions on some of these slides. Do you want me to ask them now or save them all to the end?
I think we should save them to the end.
Okay, to the end.
Because there's a lot of material to go
Okay,
through.
so we go to the
Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Okay, we go to the transportation part, and the transportation, this is we have been with the same company since 1986. Is basically the same contract, and the changes every year in order for us to renew is we increase it by CPI number, and the CPI number is really using the previous year from June 1st to May 31st. So we are looking for the CPI number from June 1st, 2018 to May 31st, 2019. Obviously, we don't have that number, and therefore we're using an estimate. I used 2.5%, so that's the projection that we're presenting here. And remember last time when we talked about the budget, we said that one of the unknown is really the CPI for the transportation budget calculation. And this hasn't changed, and the transportation distance limits is really the part of the state requirement as well as the school district policy. So for K-8, the walking distance should not exceed 0.5 mile, and for the high school students, walking distance should not exceed 1 mile. That's our policy. And this slide number hasn't changed. We're running the same buses, number of buses, vans, and special education vans. And for the community services, this is our cost of maintaining residency approval, maintaining census data, and so this is our cost for providing that service. And then undistributed, there are three categories. One is employee benefits, one is debt service, one is interfund transfers. And the reason this is called undistributed is because these are the numbers that are not distributed into at the school level or the education programs. So here's the employee benefits. The total amount's over $26 million. And I'll just highlight a couple. I think the first one is the ERS number. So this is our portion of the pension contribution for the classified staff. So that includes the support staff as well as the custodial staff. And this number the percentage that we have to contribute next year has it has dropped from 15% to 14.7%. So that's the first line. And the second line is the TRS. So that's the district contribution to the pension for our certified staff. That includes the administrators as well as the teachers. And that rate has dropped is going to drop from 10.63 to 8.86. So you actually see a decrease here. And this particular number has really helped our budget for next year. But also we have to be prepared for next year for the 2021 budget, because we already know that number is going to go up. Because they do a 5-year averaging, and 5 years ago the number was very high, and our stock market has not been doing as well as prior years. So that number is going to drop, and then also they're going to do adjustment of the expected rate of return. Probably is going to drop from 7.5 to 7%, and that's going to be will be a drastic hit on the school district. And another large number is the FICA, which is the third line. It's over $4 million, and that hasn't changed that much because the rate is different. It's exactly the same. It's just that the salary has increased, and therefore the number has gone up. And then the other important number is our health insurance. And for next year, the insurance premium is going up by 3%. So this is a place that I'll spend some time to talk about it, because we have taken on additional debt, and therefore we need to talk about it. You will see, first of all, this is the number. If you look at the 2018-19, so this is our current year. The year-end projection is actually much higher than the approved budget. It was because we borrowed the $26.5 million in June of last year. And that was after the budget was approved. So the number didn't work its way into this year's budget. And we asked the board to approve a budget transfer in February 13th. The board approved a budget transfer of about $1.8 million. And here's the place where you see the increase. And so for next year, our proposed budget, the entire $42.5 million bond, the principals and the interest is totally included in there. And also, another point I want to mention is the lease for computer. And this number is higher than our original budget by $113,000. That's what I mentioned at the very beginning, because we added a computer lease for the 7th and 8th graders. So this is the history and the future for the debt service, and the difference between 18-19 and 19-20. There's an increase of $2.4 million. That's the total cost of the $42.5 million bond. But after that, you will see, the number is pretty steady. Until 23-24, there will be a drop off of our old bond. And also, this is the time that I want to mention that we just went through Moody's review, and Moody's sent out a press release on Monday. We got we retained our AAA rating, and then also we got a rating of stable, which is great because they only have 3 rating. It can be positive, stable, or negative. Upfront, they already told me that there's no way we can get a positive. The reason is because we're at the top already. But they went through our numbers,
Wait,
and
we're at the top already.
we're at AAA.
Pardon me?
We are at AAA.
So we can't go higher, we can't.
So we
be
cannot go
positive.
higher.
Okay.
Can't go high. So we're stable, we're not positive?
Stable is the best you can get if
Oh,
you're
I thought you
AAA.
You're at the highest.
I thought
rating.
positive was better, no?
But if you're at the top, they are saying that you cannot go any higher.
Okay.
But they did tell me verbally that if they can give quadruple aid they would have given to us. So that was good. And also, right now we're looking at the possibility of refinancing the bond that we borrowed in 2002, 2003, because we refinanced it in 2010. You remember that time we saved $6.1 million when we refinanced, but now it's callable again because it's 8 years later. So I'm working with our fiscal advisors to see whether or not we should refinance. But right now, because we refinance at a pretty good rate, so the next time around, the savings is not going to be as great. It's definitely not going to be 6.1. But right now, we're doing calculation, we can save probably 1.1 million for the remainder of 10 or 11 years. So we're looking into that. And the good thing is that the Fed already made an announcement that they're not going to have any more rate increases. So I think for this year, it's going to be pretty stable. And it's callable in January 15, 2020, so next year, but you cannot borrow until three months prior. So we're looking at the possibility of borrowing in September if we're going to go down that path. I think it's worth it, and so we're in discussion right now. And
Where does the sale of Zatter property come in?
Yeah, that was my next question.
where does it come in?
Jumped right in there.
Right in debt service, where we're gonna, does that go right to debt service, or how is that gonna work?
I'll come talk about it later.
Okay?
Okay. So this graph is actually, tells the story. If you look at 2004, 2005, this number is actually $65,225,000. That was the height. That was the time when we borrowed the money to build 7 bridges, renovate Greeley, renovate Bell, and added the dishing at Rolling Brook. So we borrowed over $56 million. So we had a debt at the very, very high point was $65,225,000. And it has been going down. We have been paying off. And then starting here, we borrow the $16.5 million, and then later on we borrowed the $16 million and then $26.5 million. So right now we're at $65,555,000. That's our outstanding debt. So it's very, very, if you look at this graph, they're basically equal. They're all both at $65 million.
But that's in today's dollars.
That's right.
That was one.
I thought about it. This is 18 years later.
Yeah, and it does represent the investment that you make in the school district. So,
So if we don't borrow any more, if we don't borrow additional debt, we would be paying off everything in 38, 39. So that's 20 years. It was a 20-year bond we borrowed. So interfund transfers, you have heard the presentation by both Heidi, which is the first line. This is the interfund transfer for special aid, and this is for the summer program, summer special education program. And then you have heard, wait, that's it. And then the second line, you have heard Joe talked about, that is for the Bell cafeteria renovation. That's $100,000. So combined is $255,000 in the budget for interfund transfers for the 1920 budget. So now we talk about the fund balance. And this is really, the line for the projected is really just a projection. And, we will maintain the 4%. I think, the board is very concerned about that, and we'll maintain that. And then you will see a slight drop in the restricted fund balance. Is because we are using $100,000 from the employee benefits. From the retirement contribution fund. So we dropped that $100,000, and we are projecting at the year end, the fund balance, total fund balance, will be very similar to the closing of last year.
So we really haven't used fund balance that we put into the budget then?
No.
It's,
That's our projection.
That's our
So
projection.
we're maintaining steady. But if you look at the number from 2017 to 2018, we actually had an increase. But this year we have been using quite a bit of money. You know, we've transferred $1.8 million for the bond that was not in the budget. And then we also spent close to $1.5 million for the locks in this entire building at Greeley, and which is necessary, very good for the safety. And then also we have allocated close to $400,000 to upgrade and revamp all our PA systems in the 6 schools. So when you look at the numbers, you know, that's our projections that we're not going to have any additional fund balance.
Are you satisfied with the liability claims amount that we have, the 221?
Yes.
100, you think that, okay.
I'm comfortable, yes. Okay, so this is the part, Warren, I want to answer your question is the use of fund balance. You can see we increased use of fund balance by $3.9 million. And so it's an increase of actually between 1.3 and 1.4 million. And our debt increase is 1.8 million. And so the question is, how do you reconcile the commitment to the community that we made a promise that the tax levy will not increase because of the bond? It's because later on I'll show you that we are actually projecting an increase in the building aid. So that will offset the short of 400,000. So wanted to answer your question here, on the unassigned line, we use also for sale of property. So if we're able to successfully sell the property, the Zolder property, by June 30th, 2020, because we have a whole year to sell until next year, then instead of using all fund balance, we'll use part of the sale.
okay.
This is where it comes in.
It'll come from that
That's
unassigned.
where the flip is.
Right. So that's why there's R there, either unassigned fund balance or the sale of property. Okay.
There's an R.
And proposed appropriation of fund balance, we are proposing to use 3.9. And the first one is obviously the important thing is the commitment to, with no tax levy increase due to the $42.5 million bond. And then also the sustainability, because we are going to try to maintain the same amount of fund balance from year to year. And then also this is definitely within the tax cap. So that finished the first part. That's the non-instructional budget and the fund balance. Now we're going to go to the second part of tonight's presentation. So the second part, we're talking about the revenues, tax analysis, and contingency budget. So this is the same slide, so I'm not going to go over this. And so we start with the revenues. So this is the breakdown of the large categories from real property taxes all the way down to the miscellaneous. We're going to talk about it at the next slide. So here is the breakdown by large categories, and then you have the small categories. So our tax levy increase is 0.94%. And this is the increase. Later on, you will see a dollar increase. We'll keep mentioning that because that has an impact on the contingency budget. And the state sources, mean state aid. This is the first time we break it down into two parts. I'm presenting it as building aid and also the other state aid. The reason I want to do it this way is because I want to be able to show you and also show the public that the building aids has gone up, and that is part of the offset for the increase in the debt service. Here's the number, actually has gone up I'll give you the number. It's going up by $486,000. So that's part of the number that we're using to pay for the debt service in order to balance the tax levy. Okay. And then the appropriation of fund balance, we already talked about it in detail earlier. And then the tax revenue, this is the sales tax, and the sales tax number has been going up because the economy is good and therefore people are buying, and therefore our shares is going up. And charges for services, that really there's no major changes. And the next two groups are talked together. One is the use of money and property, and then also the next one is the miscellaneous. So I'll talk about the miscellaneous. You can see there's a hole here because we don't have a contract from the with the town anymore, so and therefore we do not have the $85,000 here for 1920. However, we increased the budget for the rental real property, this line, because that's our projected income from the sports group and then also from the town for the summer program. So that's why I want to talk about it together and show you what's the offset. And we have a balanced budget, so the revenues, if you look at the bottom, the total revenue is the same as the total expenditure. And this is the breakdown of the revenue. And we'll come back to keep stressing this number is $1,226,000 because that's the increase of the real property taxes. So that has an impact on the contingency budget. And the largest increase here, percentage-wise, is really state aid. And the total state aid increase is $921,000. So there are two parts to it. One is our building aid has gone up because we are building buildings and we are finishing projects and we're filing the final completion reports, and so state aid will start flowing. And the other part is actually we have an increase of the transportation aid because when they calculate the transportation aid ratio, our well factor has gone down a little bit, and it just fall right below the threshold, and therefore our transportation aid is going up next year. Oh, and I think one thing that you'll be very interested to know is that with the size of our population, our foundation aid has only gone up very, very, very slightly. I think Vicki knows that foundation aid only has gone up, projected going up by $9,700. And this is the representation of the percentage. And because the state aid has gone up and our appropriation of fund balance has gone up in percentage-wise, if you do a comparison, and therefore our real property taxes has gone down as a percentage of the total budget. And we have gone over this slide. This is the tax cap calculation. The important part is down at the last number. Our tax cap is at 3.4 million. So what it's saying is that our tax levy increase can go all the way up to 3.4 million. But you know that we're only asking for slightly over $1 million increase. And the tax cap, our tax cap percentage is at 3.19%. But our tax levy increase at 0.94%. So we're way below the tax cap. So we talk about the tax analysis. Just want to show you first the final number for the 2018-2019. You see a very large discrepancy, difference between the Newcastle taxpayers as well as the Mount Pleasant taxpayers. It was because of the equalization rate that we talked about last year. And so in order to calculate and to estimate next year's tax rates, First of all, you need to know the equalization rates. So here are the equalization rates for next year, 1920. The important thing here is that they are going the opposite direction. Fortunately, they are not. The difference is not that great, because when you know the problem that we had probably 5 or 6 years ago, we actually had to have the tax assessors to come here to explain it to the public, because the rates were going on the opposite direction and the discrepancy was very, very large. And so fortunately, we're not facing that. And the second part is the tax assessment. I think here we have good news, because every time I see the tax assessment go up, that's always good news. That means the value of the district is going up, where now through renovations or through development. For both towns, we're in 2 towns, both numbers are going up very slightly, but it's going up. So here's the calculation for the taxes for next year. These numbers are estimated numbers. The reason is because we don't have the final assessed value. These numbers we received from the tax assessor's offices, and they are estimated number as of March 20th. And and the reason we have to go through this exercise is because our school district is in two townships, and they have different assessments. So in order to calculate the tax rates, we had to use the equalization rate and make both towns the value equal, and to come to the bottom line, the full valuation. And the full valuation really, another word to talk about is really the market value. So what we did was that we had to use the taxable assessment divided by the equalization rate, and then you get to the full value in order to calculate, allocate the taxes into the 2 towns. So our estimated number for next year, for Newcastle, the tax rate increase will be 0.66%, and for Mount Pleasant will be 1.63%. Again, these are estimated numbers. Now we go to the contingency budget. So why do we need contingency budget? Because in this New York state law, if the budget is not approved by the voters twice, you can go 2 times, then you had to go to the contingency budget. And I think the second bullet is the most important part, is the contingency budget may not include a higher levy than the prior year's levy. So basically the levy cannot have the growth, it has to be a 0% tax levy growth. And also this information has to be included in the budget notice. So the next few slides, we're going to explain all these 3 points. So here's a flow chart. This is regarding the voting. The budget vote is on May 21st, and hopefully will be on the left side. It will be approved. Then we can all go to sleep. If the budget is voted down on May 21st, so at that point, the school board has to make a decision whether or not to go to the contingency budget. At that point, you don't have to go for a second vote, because you can just accept the contingency budget. And later on, I'll explain what the contingency budget means to the school district. Or you can put up a second vote. And the second vote is the 3rd Tuesday in June, which is June 18th. And the school board can decide with the administration's recommendation whether or not we put up the same budget, or we can lower the budget, or we can even increase the budget. You can do basically anything you want. You can present anything. But the question is, you have to calculate the chances of having an approval the second time around. And if that budget is approved, then you have a budget. Otherwise, you definitely just have to go to the contingency budget. At that point, if the second budget is voted down, you don't really have a choice. You just have to go to the contingency budget. And so how much is the reduction? So we come to this slide again because, I just want to mention, this is the number we had to reduce. Because you remember the language that was used. Let me just go back. Is that the contingency budget may not include a levy higher than the prior year's levy. So what that means is that these two numbers have to be the same. In order for these two numbers to be the same, you had to reduce the budget by $1,026,000.
You have to reduce the tax levy,
You had to reduce the tax levy, yes.
not the budget.
Well, in order to reduce the tax levy, you have several choices, right? You can reduce the budget by that amount, or you can appropriate additional fund balance. So there are several ways, but I think the easiest way, but I'll look at it, I just put it out there, because I think if you ask me, I would not appropriate additional fund balance at that point. Because, you know, we have allocated 3.9 million already. But we're not there. So there are several, just two possibilities. Actually, here, I forgot about this slide.
Right, how to get to
So
the-
how much do we need to
there.
reduce? How much do we need to reduce is 1.26. Jeff, you were ahead of me. So how do we get there? One is reduce the expenditures, you know, personnel or non-personnel, and the second possibility is use more fund balance. And the third part, you know, originally we have 3 bullets, and the third part is that we need to inform the public. So here's the budget notice, and this will also be in our budget book as well as our newsletter. So we have to inform the budget. What does the contingency budget means? This is the contingency budget line. And what we did was that if you look at the bottom 3 numbers, we have adjusted the numbers and with a reduction, and it will help us meet the contingency budget. And also, there's another number that we have to calculate is the administrative, you know, basically when you go to contingency budget, what the state is saying is you need to cut most of the numbers from the administrative costs because there's an administrative calculation, the ratio you have to calculate. So this contingency budget actually will meet that requirement. And this is the second part of the budget notice. And so basically we finished budget presentations. I just want to talk about the voter information. So the key person is the district clerk. So if you have any question, contact the district clerk and talk about the eligibility of voting, and you can still register. And then you can register up to 5 days prior to the budget vote, so that's May 16. And go contact the district clerk, and you can obtain the registration form from the district clerk. However, if you register through the district clerk, you can only vote for school budget. You cannot vote at the general election. And if you are not able to attend on the 21st to vote, then you can apply for the absentee ballot. And so we welcome comments, and you know, if you have any questions, please contact the Board of Education, contact the superintendent, or contact myself. Here's the contact information. And so we have basically completed all the budget presentations, and the next date, important date, is April 10th. There's a budget adoption, and then also we have a budget hearing on May 8th, and also that's the day that the public library is going to present its budget, and then the budget vote is May 21st, and this is an important date. Tomorrow, we have 2 forums.
It's your birthday.
Yes, we have 2 forums, and one is at 9 a.m. at the Bell Auditorium, and also one at 7 p.m. at the Bell Auditorium. We really invite everyone to attend. That's the opportunity to hear the budget and have the opportunity to talk to the administrators and also board members and ask any questions that you have. That's it. 57 slides.
John, that was so comprehensive. Thank
Wow,
you.
wow,
And it
excellent
was
job.
a great pace, so.
So Holly, you have questions?
I did. My first question is back on the the very first section of the non-instructional budget in general support. I noticed that there's an increase, particularly in travel conferences for the Board of Education. And it's also higher than the year-end projection for this year. So I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit to what that increase represents, especially since
The travel and conferences?
right. So it looks like we're budgeting more.
I actually look at that as a very positive sign, because I think our board members are attending conferences and attending retreats, and that's why we're projecting an increase we increase the budget.
Right, but that's pretty much in line with what the actual expenditures have been for the last few years. So it's not that it's a new thing. It's just more in line with what's been happening. Okay.
So we adjust the budget.
And then I also had a question on the legal services, human resources, and public information.
Okay.
You had talked a little bit about the printing costs going down, but I noticed that postage is still really is up higher. And if we're printing less, would we be using less postage or not? I know it's not a really big difference, but it looks like we
For
don't.
the HR?
Yeah. What drives our postage costs?
Well, believe it or not, at the end of the day, we still have to mail out.
Right.
We also send, something that we restarted this year is we send handwritten notes to people when they have a baby, when someone passes in their family, or to try to maintain those human connections. So that
Okay.
is something that was not being done.
It wasn't a concern. It was
It's
just a
interesting, it's a
question.
kind of a perennial question that's come up over the years, and I think, we haven't asked for a while, but there's always an issue about postage, and then there's certain requirements for postage also, although not in HR, but in other categories, for instance, the budget information has to be posted by mail, so.
Well, it just looks like we
The
also-
question of postage always comes up in terms of obsolescence and the fact that we still have to, in fact.
Well, it also looks like the last couple of years we've spent a lot less than we're budgeting, but it sounds like you're seeing an increase, or you would like an increase
No.
in the handwritten letters. No,
It's a nice-
but
No, but we actually didn't change the
But it's-
budget. We spent $200 for 2 years.
Right.
And, we didn't adjust the budget.
You didn't.
We did not.
but you don't expect to be that high again. I'm just.
No,
it's
it's-
really just curiosity since it's stamps.
So this is the reality. If you come to Ed Center, I'll just tell you these numbers. I tell you, these numbers are very arbitrary. The reason is because if you come to the Ed Center, we only have one outgoing box. Everyone put their mail in there, and then we just reallocate to different departments. So basically, we have 5 departments. We have the superintendent's office, we have curriculum, we have special ed, we have HR, and we have business office. There's only one postage meter, and we just divide it 5 ways.
Okay. My last question is on the contractual line under Human Resources and Leadership Development. The year-end projection is 28, and the budget is again 16. And the year before, it was also closer to 28. So it just looks like there's actually a trend in the actuals, but of going up, but not the budget.
So, right now, we are projecting next year will be 16, but, I think if we have another year at 28,000, we'll probably the following year, we'll adjust the budget.
Okay, what types of things fall in there?
Contractual?
I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
go ahead.
Tony, did you want to talk about some of the new systems that we're putting in place, which
Yeah.
is impacting that line?
So one of the things that we implemented just last month is something called recruiting and hiring. It's a new platform that we're using through Frontline, which is a system that we use for IEP Direct, ASOP, and other platforms that we use for different purposes. So this year we launched recruiting and hiring. It's a really robust system for recruiting candidates, but also onboarding potential new staff members. So this platform was integrated in February technically, but we launched it this month. So there was a cost associated with that.
there.
Yeah, and it's great because we use OLAS for some of that stuff right now, but the processes within OLAS are the structures and application is not really as robust and align with what we want to look for in candidates. So we're going to slowly make the shift to this new platform, recruiting and hiring. Also, if I'm not mistaken, some of that money also is associated with other platforms that we use out of not just HR, but also through curriculum and staff track and things like that. So,
But if you're reducing OLAS, I mean, isn't it just an offset?
well, we already had a loss for the year, so this was now added
Right,
on
it
top
was-
of that. Like,
We're using
So that's
both
why
systems.
next year it may drop down.
but yeah,
Right.
one should come off, right? Like because we wanted to launch it for recruiting season this year, we wanted to pilot it. We had already paid for a loss.
So for 1920, we have both platforms.
Right, we're going to maintain 2 for next year, and then we're going to hopefully transition 1 out because OLAS is a very wide net that in this county, in this region. So we're going to shift away from that.
And
For
next
right now,
year,
we're gonna keep
next year we can make a determination if OLS is better or this is better.
I know this is better than OLAS. That's not the issue. The issue is OLAS is like a default that people apply to for every job. And the problem with OLAS is you can literally go, I can put all my stuff on and just click a button and apply for like 20 jobs at once. And you get the pool of
Unqualified
candidates
candidates.
is just
Yeah.
not
You get
there.
like a carpet bomb with the resumes for
Yes,
jobs.
that's what
Right.
happened.
So this new platform forces people, first of all, we can filter in different ways, but it forces people to present us with certain data points that we want at the front end, like their transcripts, like their certifications that we want to see before they even submit their application for a position. So it provides us a different candidate pool, and the system is much more robust than all else. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
That's it? Okay.
You want more?
Yeah, sure.
No, that's all I have.
John, on pages 27 and 28, the fund balance, total fund, and then the use of the fund balance. We authorized for 18-19, $2.5 million in fund balance. Your projection at the end of 2019 is $200,000 less.
Is this slide?
27 and 28. Yeah, all right, 27, go Hoos. 27, this thing, at the end of 2019, the far right number, bottom number, $23,743,978. Okay, that's a $200,000 approximate reduction from the previous year. But we've authorized the use of $2.5 million. Where's the other $2.3 million? How do we knock, if we authorize the use of, I'll ask it a different way. If we authorize the use of $2.5 million, why is the fund balance not going down by $2.5 million?
The reason is because you authorized it, but you haven't used it, and therefore it's still sitting there.
So you're saying, essentially, what this is
So
saying is that
can I just stop you 1 minute?
nobody's successful in that so far. but try.
I think the important number is actually if you look at 2017, then I think it will be clear. Because the board authorized and the voters approved, not the voters then approved that. The board authorized using 2 million. But this number, when it goes to next year, actually increased. So what that means is that the 2 million was not used. And in fact, we actually increased the fund balance by
Right.
1.3
Does that mean
million.
this is a $3 million surplus?
Which year?
The year you just talked about it, the year I was talking about. I'm
If
going
you,
a $2.3 million
the surplus is actually 1.3 million.
Okay.
But if you look at total revenues versus total expenditures, yes, over 3 million.
So,
Does that make
So-
sense?
I mean, that's what creates the fund balance for the following year.
so
That-
what
that-
so what we're saying is that there's a $2.3 million, we estimate a $2.3 million surplus this year.
Is it a surplus or an offset? It's really, wouldn't it really be the money that we
We
did?
authorized to spend this money, but we're not.
But we
for some
didn't,
reason.
so.
Well, what we are saying is that if you if we spend the entire amount, the same amount as our budget, and then if you look at the total revenue, we will actually use up $200,000. But if you look at whether or not we're using the 2.5, no, it's 2.3. If you look at the total revenue that we receive and the total expenditures, there's a difference of 2.3 million. That's what we're saying.
So,
Does that make sense?
not to me, yeah.
Okay, let's try again. So if you look at it, there's a 2.5, we're saying allocating 2.5 for next year, right? For this year.
In order for us
But
to have
we-
a balanced budget to pay for the budget, the revenue side, we're using 2.5 million.
That's
for
right.
the fund balance.
That's right. But if you look at the bottom of these two numbers, there's a drop of 200,000,
Yes, I see.
right?
Right.
So what we are saying is that instead of using the 2.5, we're using 200,000,
Right.
right?
Okay, so now I'm asking, and we're in total agreement, and I understand that. How did we end up not having to spend 2.3 million?
Because it's really not
Either our
whether or not you
expenditures
use
were
that,
lower or our revenues were higher somewhere else.
both.
Okay,
Our expenditures is going up because of the numbers that we're talking about, you know,
but
the
it's not
debts.
going up by as much as we projected.
That's right. And then meanwhile, our revenue is higher.
Where is the other revenue higher? I didn't have to see that. Hold on.
Well, you don't see it here. You have to see it in the financial statements, right? Because here it doesn't tell you the numbers. So where we're getting more, obviously, we're not getting more taxes. So we're getting a little bit more state aid, and then also we have more prior year reimbursement from, for example, BOCES from various places, and then also our interest rate has gone up quite a bit.
So even though we've allocated those funds for transfer, we didn't have to transfer that exact amount?
We don't have to transfer the full amount.
So I
And
don't,
also
I don't remember
expenditures
the
go
exact number, but I think last year.
Expenditure is lower than our budget. It didn't go down. It's lower than our budget.
By how
That's what I
much?
mean.
Because
That's-
Jeffrey,
yeah.
remember,
By how much is the budget expenditure part how much didn't we spend based on our budget?
You're going to get a report for the end of March, right, at the next board meeting. So at that time, we can talk about it. You know, we do a month-end projection.
Okay.
So that'll be the best time
I
to
don't remember the
project.
exact numbers. I think last year, you and I were talking, when one of the community members was up, why don't we use more fund balance? And we said, well, let's use more fund balance, because we didn't know what the state aid was going to be. So I think that's probably.
I think there's another way of looking at it, okay? I don't know whether this will help. When you look at this line, the subsequent years, what they call subsequent years expenditures, so that is the assigned appropriation. The way I look at it is really a placeholder. Basically, we're saying to balance the budget and not to increase the tax levy, we need a placeholder. So we are projecting the placeholder, but, you know, from our experience, it has been always, we have not used the full amount. That's really our experience. And therefore, you see the increase of the, our fund balance has been going up, but I'm not projecting that by the end of this year will go up.
Because we're not allowed to run a negative budget.
Right.
This is not anything new. I mean, this is the dynamics of an annual budget, right? Every year we project expenses and revenues, and, you know, at the end of the year, we usually have, you know, some sort of surplus in revenues, because presumably your budgeting is prudent.
Mm-hmm.
And that surplus is something we use to then fund the following year's fund balance.
I think
Right, right, so
one
this
thing
happens
is that
every year. We
will
have different kinds of debates about
because we
this.
just received a Moody's report. I think we'll share that. It's actually public online
Right.
already. I think we'll share that with you, and you will see what Moody's, you know, from day one, every time I talk to Moody's, the one topic that they only talked about is fund balance. To them, fund balance is probably the most important piece. And this time, they actually spent quite a bit of paper space to talk about our fund balance. So that's interesting. I think maybe that requires another conversation in the future.
So, John, I have a quick question. Are you finished, Jeffrey?
I am finished.
So I have a question, and it might be more of a academic question, but I was looking through emails we received from, I guess, West Putt, where they do the report card for every district, and they're not all filled in.
We just reported out.
Correct. But I didn't see the last one.
You will see it this Friday.
Okay, so I could probably go by last Friday. I couldn't find it quickly. And we work our budget from the bottom up. It seems like a lot of districts work from the top down. They go right to the top, how much money they can spend. So, not that I don't want to do this at all. I'm saying that, what's the disadvantage of not going from the top down like all these other districts? Why don't we just go to the top of the levy?
So,
Why wouldn't we, other than increasing taxes, what's the disadvantage of doing that?
I
Is there a
think the disadvantage is for the school district. First of all, we really, our team really has worked on this budget, and we really feel that this is the amount that we need. So if you look at the difference between the tax levy limit and our proposed tax levy, there's a difference of $2.4 million. Can you imagine if we get additional $2.4 million, everyone's taxes is going to go up at least 2%.
That's what I said,
And,
correct.
and it is really not fair to the taxpayers.
What are
That's
the
money
dis-
we don't need.
What are the other districts, do all the other districts need to do that? It seems like only if I look
Yes,
at it last
because
year.
we are the two always read that report, and again, this time, when you see all the reported out school districts, majority of them have gone to
Go
the
right
top.
to the top.
Just to the top.
The advantage I've seen comes from the four administrators in that they do an efficiency or an assessment of all of our programs every year. And instead of just spending the same thing and keeping programs, they look at programs and say, this is working or this isn't. This is
Like
what we want to
OWASP.
add. And that's why I think it works better from the bottom up as opposed to the
Yeah.
top down.
We
No, I
always,
understand that. I'm saying, is
we
there a
always do.
disadvantage for us not going
I
to the
think,
top?
I think also is really our credibility, as a team, the school board as well as administrators, not just the central administrators, but also all our building administrators and our program directors. We want to be credible, and we want to create the best budget, and we want the community to
Oh,
support
believe me,
it.
I think you guys do a great job. Every year we get a wonderful budget that, again, meets the programs, doesn't overspend where we don't need it. You're very prudent.
But I think what I was hearing, because I had the opportunity to talk to some of you, is that I think there's a desire or thinking of discussing a couple points, because I've been here 12 years. During these 12 years, I have received directive from the superintendent and the school board. There are certain things that we need to follow. One is to start using up the retirement reserve. Okay, that was one piece. And then also, you remember that we have not been budgeting for compensated absences. That was removed from the budget. That's about, every year we used about $250,000. These are the numbers for retirees. They are the accumulated sick days or vacation days at the retirement time. They're eligible to be paid. That's contractual language. But the directive that we received was to remove that from the budget. So you actually don't see those numbers in the budget. So I think what I was hearing was that, there should be another conversation on this topic. I think we're right.
I also think it's important that when we ask for support, we justify that we need it. And that's in every conversation we have with the administrative team. So the principals, they come in and say, well, this would be helpful for our program, and if we had this level of staff, we would be able to do X, Y, and Z. But when we get down to the conversations about, well, show us the data, or show us the research, or show us how you're allocating all of your staff in that building to really justify us putting that additional staff member in the budget, I think we wind up in a place where at our finished product, we have a proposal for you that we really feel is justified because it's gone through that process. I think to use the top-down approach and just add, without going through a process like that, it wouldn't be fiscally responsible on our part in presenting something to the community that we felt was genuine. So that's I think how we've approached it, at least for 2 years.
Totally
And
agree.
I think we've come to you
I agree.
with everything that we felt like we needed and we could justify with our
In the
data.
last 6 budgets I've done as a board member, they've always been done this way. It just seems like we're an outlier according to these reports, and maybe in this case, it's great to be an outlier.
But I
So-
think also, one
Thank
day,
you.
we all have the understanding that if we really need a funding, we can justify the needs. Even we have to look for, over the tax cap, we will come to you and suggest it.
Thank you, Josh.
Sure.
But speaking of reserves, I just wanted to know, John, what's your opinion, based on your Business Official Association's work, what's your opinion on getting a TRS reserve, or just a general pension reserve that TRS and ERS would be included in? In what category? Do you think that's very likely?
This is going to happen this time.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to happen this time, because the last time when I was at the state capitol, they didn't even have a Senate sponsor. I know
That's right,
Buckwald
David Buckwald was a sponsor
at the
last year.
assembly, and
Yeah.
it passed both houses, but didn't move
Right,
past the governor.
okay.
I think there should be, TRS definitely should be included. I don't think that, if you ask me the likelihood of having another reserve, my answer will be no. But I think it's very likely to be combined into a retiree
Right, it's
reserve.
really a retiree reserve.
Yes,
yeah.
but you see, the part that doesn't make sense is that we can reserve for ERS, which represent probably about 16% of our total salaries. Meanwhile, we cannot reserve against 84% of our salaries, because our teachers and administrators' total salary represent about 84% of our total salary budget.
So if we had a reserve, that would allow us to smooth out the changes year by year?
It could, yes.
And especially in a year
That's why
when
we
TRS
set
is
it
going
aside in the
down.
very beginning. But then we received a directive to start using up.
Right.
And especially in a year where TRS is going down, and we anticipate
This is the
it to go
best time.
up,
This is
would
the
have been
best
a
time,
very good
yes.
time to do that.
Next year may not be a good year because it will go up.
Right, that's right.
John, I just want to understand this TRS a little bit more than I do. You said they're going to lower the rate to 7%, and over a course of, I think, another year or two. But when they get to 7%, or when they get to a fixed number, if we actually earn that exact number for 5 years, what would be the percentage rate contribution on our salaries that we'd be paying? Like now it's 14%, it was 16%. Is there a rule of thumb that if it was actually 7%, what they estimated, we pay 10% every year? What is the baseline for that?
But there are a lot of variables, right? Because all depends how many people retires, and then also how many people passed away. So, there's a mix in there. It's not just straightforward.
Okay, I understand.
And then also-
But all things being equal, is there some baseline number, like 10% or whatever it is?
I don't know the number.
Okay. And so it matters how many people retiring throughout the state?
Yes.
And,
And then also, there's another factor here is that, right now there are 6 tiers, and they are all different. But obviously, tier 5 and tier 6, they are not retiring right now. So right now, probably tier 1 for our school district, I think we only have 2 employees left in tier 1. So we're talking about tier 2, 3, 4, they're retiring. So they are all at different level, and especially when tier 5 start coming into play, it'll be very different.
So it doesn't matter who's retiring from our district specifically, it matters.
No,
we get a certain
it's the
percentage
entire state.
Of the whole state.
Yes, the rate calculation is the entire state, there's one number. And then also, the beauty of this, I know this is a huge amount of money, but the beauty of this, if you look at the OPEB is really just, there's the retirement,
Post-employment
and our liability is only health insurance. Just imagine, we also have the pension liability, that number is going to be huge. Basically, when our employee leaves our employment, retired, we have no obligation for the pension anymore because it's paid up.
So okay, that gets to my next question then. Is there a financial advantage or disadvantage to having less employees if it's based on the whole state retiring?
Well,
We end up with a higher percentage.
obviously, it's better to have less employees because your salary number will be down. And then you take a percentage of that, your budget will be lower, right? There'll be a difference between 100 employees versus 10.
But if the whole state is losing employees and losing teachers, which it is, as far as I understand, then the percentage of the employees' salaries has to go up to cover the retires.
That's right. That's another factor comes into play. So it's very difficult to say, exactly what is the number.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
John, I was curious about the wealth factors. I know the assessments showed that property wealth is going up. But then,
But there are
transportation
two different things.
Right.
Well factor is your income.
Okay, so
And-
that's the transportation aid increase?
Right. Because the well factor actually went down.
But property wealth is going up, which is the assessment?
It's not
affects the
property
assessment.
wealth, it's property assessments.
Property assessment is going
Values,
up. Okay.
property values is going up.
Okay.
Very slightly.
Right, minimally, yeah.
But you remember for several years it was dropping.
Okay.
And that in itself will increase the tax rates.
Yes.
Anything else?
Nope.
Thank you, John.
Okay. Thank you, John, that was
Thank
great.
you so much,
Thank
John.
you.
A lot of information. Thank you for a lot of work.
Oh, sure, thank you.
Okay. Christine, anything else?
Did you want to see anyone from the audience had questions about this? Yeah.
Would anyone in the audience like to ask a question regarding budget? Or a comment regarding budget?
To either of you in the audience.
No, we have more than either. We're a couple. We're a handful.
I'm done with my report.
You're done, Christine? Okay, thank you. With that, I'd like to move on to approvals and ratifications. Can I get a motion?
Public comment.
Oh, committee reports. I just asked for that.
Well, I don't know if you were clear about public comment.
So let's do committee
or not.
reports first. Vicki and I met regarding policy this week, and we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. Communications?
We didn't, we talked about that last time, but we have to set up a next to follow.
Because you put
Facilities now or later? Or neither?
show you.
Facilities are still standing.
Okay, great. So, now regular public comment. Would anyone like to make a regular comment on anything regarding the district?
This number, like, if you have a contract.
Okay, thank you very much. Now let's go to approvals and ratifications. Can I get a motion to accept the minutes of March 20th, 2019 board meeting?
I'll move to accept the minutes.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Policy 3.2, or 3.2 policy 3060, district use of credit card, third reading and adoption. Christine?
So the policy committee had met and we made adjustments based on feedback we received through our last meeting. We also got some input from our auditor, and then we met again with our attorney, but I'm pretty confident that we'll probably have some more feedback tonight, so this most likely won't be ready for adoption. So I guess I would share that we're ready for feedback if people have it that they would like to give us on the revised version of the
Can
policy.
we put the policy up on the board?
Oh,
John, can you put that up there?
yes, I'm
Thank you.
getting it.
Do we need to open this for
All
discussion?
right, make a motion.
You don't need a motion to, unless we're going to move to accept it.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
Hold on, I think, do we have to take it off the table or not to discuss it?
I don't think it was tabled.
It wasn't,
I tabled it.
last week we
It was
tabled
never
it.
tabled.
Did I table?
But we're not voting on it, so there's no need to take it off the table, in my opinion.
Not unless you're voting on it, but if
Okay.
you're going to discuss it and then vote on it, then we'll take it.
It's up there. Great. So we can take a look at that and
Can I start with asking for clarification? When I got a copy of it so I could look at it without the changes after I spent 3 weeks asking for the changes. It didn't make sense logically. There was a couple of words that just, I can't understand. It says, I think it says, use of credit card is not intended to circumvent the district's policy on purchasing. The card will not be used for district business-related expenses where a purchase order is accepted. Then all of a sudden, where costs may fairly be accurately estimated prior to the actual incurring expenses. What is that?
You mean the first part of the sentence, or are you questioning really the last half of the sentence?
I'm questioning how the part after the accepted comma, where costs may fairly be accurately estimated prior to the actual incurring expenses, fits with the beginning. Does that mean it can't be used that way, or it can be used that way?
I think that was a leftover sentence, and I would agree that that last clause of the sentence, it's more that it's not necessary, rather than...
I'd just like an
not
explanation
understand.
for it. I don't know what it means.
I think it was in the original language, where they were trying to discuss costs being assessed, being estimated.
But if they don't-
Expense. And so I think it was just a point of clarification. I'm not sure that we need that language.
I actually like it if it could be explained to me where,
Well, I think the point of the sentence is that you would not be able to use the credit card where a purchase order is accepted. I think that's the simple point of the sentence.
and the purchase order is an estimate of the expenses incurred.
I think it actually makes sense. I mean,
It's
if we
clarifying. I mean,
if
we
we
don't
read
have
it
to-
aloud, it says it's not intended to circumvent the district's policy on purchasing. The district credit card will not be used for district business-related expenses where a purchase order is accepted, comma, where costs may fairly be accurately estimated prior to the actual incurring of expenses such as whatever. It's saying, I think it's actually clarifying.
Right. I mean, I do think the last clause is redundant. It's not really necessary, but I think it is clarifying.
It's
That
kind of
was the
describing
point.
what a purchase order
what
is.
does it clarify?
Exactly.
What a purchase order is. Like a purchase order is a prediction of an incurred expense.
But that's in order to be able to issue a check in advance? Is that the purpose of the purchase order? So I might be able to estimate...
No, it's very seldom do we pre-issue the check before the expenses were incurred. Right.
So you're saying a purchase order is not an accurate expense?
Purchase order is actually a fair estimate of the total
Right,
cost.
it's an
And
estimate.
therefore, you open a purchase order. So let's say you open a purchase order for $1,000, but the purchase order usually has to be higher than your actual expense, because then, there's a way we can increase the purchase order amount, but
But you're usually
preferably-
going over, like anything
Right.
up to
So
1,000 and it comes in at 875.
So let's say you attend a conference, and if you can predict the cost to be, let's say, $950, then you will probably open the purchase order for $1,000.
Who's accepting this purchase order?
Well, here is saying is that if the vendor or whoever is holding this meeting does not accept the purchase order.
All right, so Holly, hotels, registration, there are some places that will accept a purchase order. So what it is it's a guarantee that we're going to pay, right? So that it's an estimate, and then we pay upon,
Receipt of the bill.
right, receipt of the bill, which usually occurs after the conference.
Or when
So-
you register for the
Yes.
conference.
So the parentheses where it says such as tuition charges for attendance at conferences and lodging, that's actually referring to not the purchase order.
You're talking about business-related expenses.
It's describing here that if a purchase order is accepted for tuition charges for attendance at conferences and lodging, the purchase order will be used before the credit card. That's what this is saying.
Rather than credit card. If a place accepts purchase order, we must use purchase order.
Maybe we could say it that plainly.
I think we changed the sentence to say plainly. It was a little more convoluted before, so.
I
it's
think
saying-
adding these such as tuition charges is confusing because you may be able to estimate it, but you can't use a purchase order because they won't accept it. I don't think that actually adds anything because not all lodging facilities will accept a purchase order. Is that correct, Christine?
Yes, so what we tried to do, because at the last meeting we got feedback that it wasn't clear what we would use the credit card for, we tried to define what we would use a purchase order for, right? So we said it in a different way. We would use a purchase order for tuition charges at conferences and lodging first. And if you can't use the purchase order, then you use a credit card. We tried to write it the other way, but we got feedback from you guys that that wasn't clear. So now we're trying to write it a different way, but now I'm getting feedback that that's not clear. So we have to try to write it a different way.
We could say, I mean, we can make it that the use of a credit card is not intended to circumvent the district's policy on purchasing, period, which it's like that. The district card will not be used for district business-related expenses where a purchase order is accepted.
Period.
Period. And then you could say typical business expenses.
Actually, I would much rather we list the potential specific places that a purchase order may not be accepted that we would allow the credit card to be used for. Because I mean, it should
typical
be
Right,
for
I think we're doing that,
That's
tuition
what I was-
charges,
yes.
conferences and lodging.
Okay, so
Right.
Why
I
don't
would
why
say
don't we just say specifically that?
hotels or what airfare. I don't know what the specific
not
thing.
travel.
If it's literally only conference tuition and lodging, then I think we should say just conference tuition and
Would
lodging.
that be consistent with your needs?
yes,
Okay.
it's really only for those two areas right now that I feel like we need to have this policy for.
Okay, so then we can be explicit, more explicit, right?
Just so
We're
this-
saying that
This
tuition
credit
charge-
card is intended to be used for attendance at conferences and lodgings where a purchase order is not accepted. Like, you can say what your intent
Right,
is.
that's what it says. except
If
there's
you
a
wanted to
clarifying
try
clause.
to include as many possibilities as possible, I know one thing is that airlines would not accept a
But
purchase
we're not
order.
talking about it all.
But we said
People
it
have
would
to
be
be
used
reimbursed for
travel.
travel.
Okay.
That's how we get commitment.
I guess we were trying to avoid a situation where we'd have to come back and change the policy again every time there was another category of
But I think
conference expenses.
I think we want to keep, my preference, because of the potential risk in a credit card, is to have it as narrow as
Okay,
possible. If we've never.
I agree, yeah, I think that's fine.
So basically, do you see that striked blue sentence, such as tuition charges for attendance at conferences and lodging that we took out last meeting? We're going to put that back in a different way,
Oh,
Yeah,
okay?
oh, you moved it. I see what
Well,
happened.
we took it out based on our feedback.
We took it out but moved it.
We're going to
It's
put it
the
back
last
in.
sentence.
Yep.
It's still there.
Yeah. Well,
We
we
adjusted it.
wrote it in a different way, but now we're going to write it in another way. So we'll try again.
Okay.
is there any other feedback, though, before we come back next week?
Oh, I've got more feedback. I thought we were just talking about this. It looks like you inquired with the auditor, the internal auditor, about their feedback on this, and they suggested $3,000 limit. Is there any reason we don't do that?
Do you want me to answer that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah.
we were concerned with some of the costs of the conferences in the hotel. It might exceed $3,000.
For an individual?
Right.
Yes.
Like a
Yeah,
certain-
a registration sometimes can be $2,000, and then the hotel associated with that, depending how long it is. We just
Right,
had
it
2
could-
people go to Texas for 5 days. So I was just concerned that it might exceed $3,000.
And then
Okay, well, we can ignore the auditor. Then secondly, the auditor also suggested that
No, we're
we...
not
that we,
ignoring the auditor at all.
They also suggested that we put the card associated with a specific person in the district. Is there any reason we're not going to do that?
I don't have a problem doing that. We didn't, that came to us after we had a policy
And
meeting, so
does that
that
have
would
to-
be something we can discuss.
Does it have to be in policy where it says only one person will have, I mean, we said that, you know.
I think it should. That's what the auditor suggested.
Yeah, it's about the who's holding the liability. I think.
So
Yeah,
isn't this,
accountability.
but doesn't the school district hold the liability?
There's somebody within your organization who should be accountable. If you have nobody accountable, then
But if only one
They're
person
nobody
can,
accountable.
only one person has authorization to use the card.
If their name's not on it, they are not the only person authorized to use it.
So,
If it's in the
Sure. If they,
Not by-
if they're the only person who has access to that card,
I don't know that the credit card company would agree with us when
Sure they do.
some other district spends, or some other person in the district whose name is not on the card but is an employee
That would-
uses it for
that
something.
would be a fraud,
That would be
right?
fraud,
That would
the
be
way
fraud.
it got set up.
I mean, I have
I would want
I have a corporate business card
clarification.
under the corporate name.
why are you
Does your name
opposed to-
appear on it?
Pardon me?
Does your name appear on it?
No.
So I'm uncomfortable with any employee's name being on that card other than my own, right? Because I don't think it would be fair to put the district's clerk name on our credit card, so we'd have to change the process.
I just want to say something, which, you know, with all these discussions, and I respect everybody's opinion on this, but I look at the way that this has been drafted with the limit on the credit card, all the limitations in place, all the safeguards in place in terms of who has control, when it can be used, whether it says Chappaqua Central School District on it or not, but it's assigned to one person locked in their desk, pre-approval, auditor approval, et cetera. I'm not seeing where the giant risk is, given the safeguards we've set up. If I'm missing something, somebody tell me. I don't see it. I don't see the problem that we're going over and over again. If we've gone over with the auditor, if we have it, if we can't charge more than $5,000, if it's only to one
Per
person.
person,
So
okay.
if somebody uses it inappropriately, like we said, that's fraud, because that's the way we've set it up. We can't, the way this is set up, it can't be some massive fraud that could happen. So if I'm missing something, somebody tell me.
Any
The
individual violating
number
this
could
policy.
be taken, right, and used, because, I mean, you know, everyone has had a credit card number.
But that's a fraud that we wouldn't be responsible for.
Whoa. Say that again? If somebody in this district used that credit card, you think the credit card company, that wasn't authorized, the credit card company's going to say, don't worry about it?
Well, if it's a stolen number,
Right.
you're protected.
If there's a name on it and somebody else uses it, then I think they will say, you're right. But if there's no name on it, anybody.
Okay, but we'll
anybody
see
in the
that
district can
in
use
one,
it.
if there's a limit
That's the reason why I
on
think
the
they suggested
card,
putting a name on it.
there's only, it just can only go
But-
so far.
But
That's
Jane,
what I'm
if we have a
saying.
limit of 5,000 per person per event, the credit limit on that
Yeah,
card.
what is the credit limit on the card?
We haven't applied for one yet because we don't have a policy to,
Right.
to
Yeah.
allow us to engage in a process. I'm going to give you a real example. We had, there's people on here that are going on a trip and we had to use a personal credit card to hold your rooms. It's not appropriate. We have to figure out a way for us to be able to do that in a professional manner.
Yeah, I feel like we do need to find a way to allow the use of a credit card that adequately protects everyone, the individual and the district, and allows this. That's why I have a lot of feedback, because I want to find a way to feel comfortable with
No, I
the
get
way
that.
we're
I'm just
managing
not
the risk.
comfortable with an individual's name on it. I'm not.
Okay, so we haven't even talked about that with our attorney. So why don't we bring that back to the policy committee and discuss that?
I mean, if someone gives me a
Well,
better
we'll
reason,
discuss
I
that
could change
then.
my mind, but right now I'm not.
Could I also maybe ask that we look into what type of a card and what protections we actually would have from a credit card company and restrictions on liability, to know, what we're actually looking at as a feasibility.
Right, and I'd like to know the ultimate limit on the card.
Okay, I think we started off with that, but then we went to maximum expenditure per person.
If you've got 5 people going somewhere and it's, 5 days in Texas, that's, if you limit it
$25,000.
That's
arbitrarily,
difficult. Right, that's the problem, right, so.
But the sign-off that we have set in place is, I'm just saying.
Do other people have
It seems
feedback?
a pretty comprehensive sign-off, right?
Yeah,
There seem to be a
it
lot of
seems
controls.
to me.
But, look, we'll take all the feedback and think about it and come back.
But people who want to commit fraud probably aren't going to feel too bad about violating our policy.
Right.
But look at this, it says, any individual violating this policy will be subject to discipline in accordance with law and any applicable contract.
That was
So-
my other thing, I had a word,
so if you-
law, it just says law. I did want to
Right.
add.
But so
fix
if
that.
someone violates this in our district, then maybe they won't be in our district anymore.
Right, we'll be out X amount of dollars and they'll be out of a job.
But again, what's the total liability, I guess?
That's why I think
Mhm.
knowing what type of cards we might get and what the maximum liability from the issuer in event of fraud, how do they define fraud, things like that.
Well, we can find out about their fraud laws. I mean, I can't even go to a grocery store out of state with my own car sometimes without getting a fraud alert. Like, they're so specific right now. So there's ways to set this up that they're going to notify you of any
Also,
unusual activity on your account.
We have fraud insurance. Does
I
that-
just don't want to get
How
so
much
bogged
repair
down
is
that we
insurance?
can't function.
I mean,
So there's got to be an easier way to do this.
We even added another layer of control that every time the card is used, there has to be a review by the claims auditor
But again, these are for things that
and
are
approval.
fairly legitimate uses,
Right,
not
this
for
is a
malfeasance.
non-fraud situation.
Right.
So there's the two situations.
I'm more concerned about the card being in someone's hands or the number being in the hands of someone who doesn't care what
I
our
understand,
policy
and
is.
I
So you're
understand that
saying,
it's more-
or
most likely
an
to be
employee
the
who doesn't care about our
number and not the
district.
card.
It doesn't have to be them.
Who could it be then?
It could be anyone who gets their hands on the number.
Right,
Then
when you
that's a
go,
fraud. I mean, if someone steals your credit card and they use it, you call the credit card company and I don't know, mine was $50 or something.
Well, that's your personal liability. I don't know that the same liability, that the same ones apply to municipalities and corporations, and that's why I think we need to find out more specifically. This is based on something I read in a financial blog.
if, from a slightly different perspective, from a practical standpoint, if the district clerk is the only person that can use this card, is authorized to use this card, does that mean that the district clerk is the person who's become the de facto travel agent?
It would only be used in the event that a purchase order is not permitted, and right now.
Right, but every time the card has to be used, typically, that means the district clerk has to apply, or go online
Would
and
have to book the hotels.
book
and
book
the
this or that,
registration.
book the
Yep.
conference. Right.
How many of those do
And-
we do?
Well,
I
they
guess-
typically happen out of
Adam
Adam's
thinks of
office and my office, but in my other district, we had multiple people who were able to use the credit card. Based on this discussion, I think we have to funnel it through one person. So this is the situation we're going to be in based on the controls that you feel are necessary in order for us to use the card.
My question
So, which is fine.
My question is more of a percentage out of, and this might be a hard question to answer, when we have these conferences and hotels, how many don't use purchase orders?
Well, I
Is
sent
it-
you the reimbursement for the administrators. We could pull the information for the teachers if you'd like to see that.
But is it more or less?
I don't know how to answer that.
I'd say, I bet it's more for teachers. We send more teachers to conferences than we do administrators.
Well, there's
No, no, that-
350
the
teachers.
The question is, how
20
many
administrators.
conferences accept purchase orders versus not? Do most
I would say most conferences accept purchase orders, most hotels do not.
Okay.
That's probably what it is.
That was
It's a
I'm sorry,
logic
I didn't articulate
Yeah, no,
my
it's
question
fine.
correctly.
That's probably what it is. So where we would probably be using this most often would be for overnight conferences where a purchase order is not accepted
At the hotel.
at the hotel, and people,
I'm just
That's what I
curious,
understand.
I'm sure there, like if there's like a particular incident that you could inform us on, you know, we've all seen, you know, malfeasance. I'm just curious if they've seen malfeasance with the safeguards that we've put in place.
I don't think that, I guess my concern is the policy is going to protect us from people doing accidental things, such
Like
as.
what? Like I'm curious if,
Say
the way we
somewhere-
have it set up, where's it gonna go south?
Okay, so it's if somehow, okay, so say she's booking on Marriott. Sheraton was recently hacked, right?
Right.
And information got out. So if our district card was stolen in a hack, because we're booking hotels online or however we're doing it, or even if they're just hacking their databases,
But we're protected from that. There's-
how? Our policy doesn't protect us from that.
The credit card
credit card
company.
company.
But that's a big assumption, we're gonna find out.
And that's
Christine said
that's
she
a
was gonna
question
find
that
out.
I've asked, yeah.
I don't think we're ever going to protect ourselves from that scenario. It's just how do we recover when it occurs, right? So to say
I
we'd
wanna
ever
know what
have
the risk is.
right, to ever have a card in place where we don't run the risk of having it compromised,
But all of us
can't
have a
guarantee
card
that for
compromised,
anything.
and you're not
Of course.
responsible for those charges.
So what?
Well, I don't understand the doubt there, because if your personal credit card is used fraudulently, you're protected.
Yes, you're not
So
responsible.
are you saying that that would not be the case with this credit card?
I'm saying I need to find out.
Yeah, I'm saying that I think that the rules may be
You think
different.
the fraud rule?
The fraud protection, I think, could be different for this type of a card, because this is not a personal card, it's probably a corporate card.
John, can I ask John a question? John, we have, we were looking at the $4,000 line in the Board of Ed travel, et cetera. In the total district, what is the total budget for travel for next year in this budget?
I don't know. The reason is because some of the cost does not just come out of the travel line, because it can come out of contractual lines. So it's very difficult to tease out the actual
Do
number.
you have a guess? Is it $50,000, $500,000? All right, well, maybe you could guess later on.
If we need to find out.
I think we'll be less than
You need to call a
100,000,
credit
let
card
me put it
company.
Right, I
that
was
way.
gonna say.
We will find out through, we would have a corporate account, so we'll find out.
If
what
there's
the-
any differential
what the
in terms of
fraud
our
protection
protection,
is.
because it's on an individual's name versus a company name, I would find that surprising, but I'd like to know.
Is there any other feedback that people want us to look at from a policy committee perspective?
No.
I would like
just
to.
want to clarify, I have three things to look in, well, three things to do and to look into. One is to make explicit that what the credit cards can be used for specifically, to the exclusion of other types of charges.
Right, the purchaser.
Number two is looking into putting an individual's name on the card. Number three, finding out about fraud protection for corporate credit
An
cards.
entity, not a individual.
As opposed to individual credit
And
cards.
the
Those are
limit.
the three
And,
things I have.
and the
Is
limit
there
on the
any-
card.
That's the other. That
Putting
I'd
it
actually
on
like
the
to.
card, right.
I'd like to see a.
And what number
I'd like to
would
see
be-
a
would
maximum
be
credit
reasonable?
limit in here.
Well, you can always ask for maximum. credit
Yeah,
limit
I think we should have a
Can I,
maximum limit.
I think
I
one
think
of
we
the
should
things that'll
say-
solve for me, the liability thing, if they just send us a copy of the contract for the credit card,
Right,
that's what it was.
yeah, that's
Well, of
it.
course,
So now
we
we
would
gotta
get
pick a
that.
company and,
that can make your research easy. Just whoever your credit card's going to be. Or ask MasterCard and Visa to send us copies of their contract for a corporation.
It's actually by the issuers, not
Okay.
Okay.
Anything
Right.
else?
Oh, is there anything
Whatever,
else?
whoever it's.
anything else, guys?
No, thank you.
Okay, so,
All right, so can I talk about this next policy?
yes.
Sure.
All right, so,
So, hold on, so
Yeah.
3.2 is still on the table, and
Uh,
3.3.
Okay.
all right, so 3.3, so we had a couple situations where families were moving and they wanted their kids to finish out the year and not finish out the year. If they were in like a 3rd grade, they wanted to go to 4th grade at the elementary school. If they were in 7th grade, they wanted to go to 8th grade in the middle school where they were, even if they moved to a different zone. But what was happening is that, when that happens, if they have kids in the lower grade, they have to move. So I started looking at this policy, and I found out that in your policy, it doesn't even address that. That's in the regulation, which is the superintendent's regulation. So
It's your fault.
I want to eliminate it. I feel
Well,
like.
it was done before she got here, so.
So with the policy committee discussed this, and I believe that kids should go to school where they're zoned. I don't think we should have families being separated, even though they may think that that's in the best interest of their kids, to send one kid to one school and another kid to another school because they finished. I'm not sure why there were liberties in the regulation to allow for that to happen, but I think for consistency's sake, I think that we should remove that. We should remove the regulations completely and redesign the policies so we're just following a board policy. I don't think the superintendent should have discretion over residency.
I think the fact is that was not a policy, so that regulation was not really valid. Because that regulation created a policy.
Right.
The issue was
Regulation
not
should-
addressed in the policy at all.
Regulations support a
And for
policy, don't
some
create a new policy.
reason, when they wrote the regulation, they just created something completely new and different from what was in the policy.
Does it conflict with the
It
policy?
doesn't even conflict. It adds something completely different.
Like creates a new policy.
So then it wasn't
It creates a
contemplated in
new
the policy.
issue. It creates a new category
So then it wasn't
of
contemplated.
issue that was not at all in the policy.
It's
very,
So take it out.
well, I would like
You guys
to.
write regulation?
yeah.
Well, I'm going to eliminate the regulation and just have a policy. So we're going to have a policy for this area of the district, so there's no regulation. I don't think the superintendent should have discretion over residency. In the policy, which is appropriate, if kids move in the middle of a school year to a different zone, they finish where they are. Totally appropriate. But for them to continue in in that same school just because of what grade level they're in, but then their sibling have to move, I see that as highly problematic. And I also don't see it as a discretionary authority under the superintendent.
No,
So-
there was no authority to do that.
Well, that's been
However,
the,
within
that's
the
been
regulation,
the
within the practice.
policy slash
Not you,
regulation
I
slash
have no problem
practice.
adding into a policy so it's very clear to anybody that you can't move, if you can move, but you can't keep your kid where they were previously.
Well,
For
you
the-
can
for the next school
the
year.
for the
For
remainder
the rest of
year.
the school
Well,
year. right.
then I think you just don't address it. I don't think you have to say that you can't do that.
Right, it's not
You just
addressed.
don't address it.
It's not in the policy.
Right, it's not.
That's presented, the new policy. What's in the new policy,
I still feel that there should be some element of discretion allowed to the superintendent. I think there are going to be some situations where somebody needs to finish out a school. I think it's going to come up. And I think this is a huge change in practice, that if we change it, we change it. I think people need to be notified. Maybe people coming up in the district don't know that, but I've lived here for 20 years and that's been the practice. So I think people need to know that there's been a change.
Yeah, the discretion is in finishing the school year, if the family moves in the middle of the school year.
I think you put a lot of pressure on the superintendent, one. Two, we get in a situation, unfortunately or fortunately, as a school district, we're supposed to treat everybody the same. So once you give her discretion, then it's hard to not use that discretion for people subsequently.
I honestly would rather have no discretion in this area. I like having discretion in a lot of different areas, but for this particular area, based on what I've been experiencing since I've been here, with people having these requests, which you have been a part of some of those discussions, I think just being very clear what our practice is more important than having
I actually thought it was less discretion because I thought that because of how the practice was, that like you said, I didn't realize it was in the regulation, not the policy, that you really could only finish out whether it was 4th grade or 8th grade, and there was no discretion to allow other people to do that. So, I know that it's come up, but to me, that was the policy. So, it's news that it was in a reg, not the policy.
So this is just a first reading, so I'm presenting it publicly to you the first
Okay.
time. So I think you should think about it,
Okay.
because I know it's a change in our practices, but I think it's in the best interest of the district. And even though people may not feel this way, it's the best interest of our families to not have a bifurcated system for our residents.
Yes, I don't think
when they
that's
have-
great. I agree on
When you
that.
said it's a change in our practice, have we ever denied somebody that? Is you saying we never deny anybody, so we might as well?
We've allowed kids to finish out
Like fourth
in
grade
the
or
8th
eighth
and
grade.
4th grade if they've moved in the 3rd grade to a different zone.
Every time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they requested it, they just have to provide the transportation.
And they drive or whatever?
And it's happened.
If they move between the grades, or if they move during 3rd, they finish 3rd and 4th?
If they move during 3rd, they finish 3rd, and then they have the right to go to 4th.
Well, not the right, they have the option.
They have the option. Well, they
had
right. Based on
basically the right.
Based on the regulation, they could finish.
They can request. They can request that the superintendent allow it. And it has to be by the principals of both schools and.
It's basically,
It's-
they've been able to
right.
do it.
Oh, I just thought of one other thing. You said you were looking up 3 things. I know it was discussed, it was somewhere in an email, I think I saw it, that in case there's something needs to change in the regulation for 60/30, make sure you're going to talk to the attorneys to make sure it was consistent. Does that change if we make changes to policy 60/30, I think it was?
Oh, it's
The credit card policy.
cross-reference?
Right. Make sure that
Yes.
the regulations are
Yes.
pretty detailed. They're going for
Right,
pages.
so
actually.
Right,
cross-reference.
so,
There's a cross-reference
And
too.
the previous, I'm talking about the previous,
Of
60/30, the credit card policy.
oh, I know, we can't change,
I'm just saying that you said, I think you said in an email that you talked to the attorneys to
Right.
make sure.
Right.
so we
I'm just
have,
reminding you, that's the 4th thing to look at.
right, and we would change policy 6095 after the credit card policy is adopted, so that would be the next step of
What is
this.
6095?
It deals with expenses, with travel
Reimbursement.
expenses, and reimbursement.
Okay.
But we'd have to do one thing at a time. So basically, for student
so-
residents, I want to remove the regulations.
Okay.
And I want to, we have this updated based on changes in New York State regulations, right? We need to update this policy. And then the attendance zone piece is really the departure from where we've been
Gotcha.
in the past,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
Look at this policy, it's been revised 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times.
Yeah, this is one of our,
It seems like either the regulations are changing by the state or
I think
we're changing.
6095.
I think
Yeah.
residence is one of those things that
states
state law
only, yeah.
changes more often than some others.
Look at
okay.
this,
All right.
2008, when I was on the board, we changed it every 2 months.
All right, so we'll put that on for a second reading at the next meeting, if that's okay with everybody.
Yes.
And then we'll do a 4th reading for the credit card policy.
Let's hope.
Can we
It
get,
could be a
We like to refer to it as another reading.
can we get the double digits?
Yeah, okay. All right.
All right, I recommend 4.1 instructional as presented.
Second.
I'll move 4.1.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So we welcome Linda back.
Yes.
She was our intern
Yes.
at
Welcome back, Linda.
Seven Bridges, and now she'll be supporting
Great.
Roaring Brook when Erin
Excellent.
goes out on her maternity. So
Okay.
never. Okay, I present 4.2 non-instructional as presented. Recommend.
Do I have a,
Yes, I move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation on item 4.2, non-instructional personnel.
do I have
I'll
a
second. I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Can I get a motion for item 5.1 and 5.2?
Wait, I'd just like to point out that Blair is sticking around for another couple of months.
Yes.
Yeah.
God bless
Nicely for
Blair.
us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Blair.
Thank you, Blanche.
I'll tell her.
Tell her to keep bringing the chocolate.
Blanche Blair, not Blair.
Blanche Blair.
Right.
Wait, watch out.
Yeah, that's
She
bad.
keeps a jar of chocolate. The public should know that Adam, Tony, and Blair are the ones with the chocolate in the inside of the building.
And Blanche brings cupcakes. So,
Blanche Blair.
Blanche Blair.
I should
Okay.
spend more time there.
Can I get a motion for item 5.1 and 5.2? CSC summary is reported to the board on March 27, 2019.
I move 5.1 and 5.2.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
5.8, be resolved, the Board of Education approves consent judgment to the Rita Minnow Living Trust for assessment year 2016 in the amount of $4,159.38.
I'll move 5.8.
Do I have a second?
Yep.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
5.9, can I have a motion, be it resolved, the Board of Education approves the agreement for services with Jennifer Sarabello for literacy consulting for 1/2 day during school year 2019-2020 in the amount of $5,500 and authorizes the Board President to execute this agreement.
I will move 5.9.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
I just want to ask,
no.
how many people does she work with?
Do we have we done a sign up yet for the Summer Institute? Or?
We haven't. We
Is
have.
this,
we've
this is with
planned-
teachers?
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
a literacy
Okay.
institute. We're offering a literacy institute over the summer on August 5th and 6th, and she's going to be our keynote. And we believe that she will be a big draw. Our teachers have been reading her books for years, and she's one of the hottest writers and speakers. She's a New York Times bestseller. Previously affiliated with Teachers College, which is the program we're using for literacy. So we think she's going to be a really
Wow, okay.
successful,
Sounds great.
important person for us
Excellent.
over the summer. So,
Great.
yeah, we're lucky to have her.
All in favor?
Aye.
5.10, be it resolved, the Board of Education approves bid award recommendation B 2019-3, purchase of musical instruments and purchasing, servicing and operating of sound, videos, and stage equipment. Recommended award to the Music Store Incorporated in the amount of $14,411.79.
I move item 5.10.
I will second item 5.10. Any discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
More of a question. I'll personalize. My kids have left behind instruments that I think they'll never play. Does the district accept donations of instruments? When we purchase them?
If they can be used, will be usually evaluated by one of the music teachers. For example, we always have people want to donate their piano. So,
I'm past that. I'm
Yeah.
talking about
Like the trombone.
instruments that.
so if something is
No,
easy to carry, if it's easy to carry, we ask the
Yeah,
person to
good
bring it
quality
in,
that was used in
and
the
then
middle
one
of
of
the
the music teachers will evaluate whether or not there's a value to it.
Like a violin or flute, trombone, not a
trumpet.
piano, trumpet.
Does anyone have a trumpet?
I get a clarinet. I love the clarinet.
Since I'm into music, I look through all these instruments, and there's some very unique instruments we're getting. So
Is this for in one particular building, or is this across the district?
I believe it's across the district.
I couldn't
I mean,
quite
like,
tell.
there's a baritone saxophone. People don't buy baritone saxophones at all.
This is district-wide.
Is this Vinny in the crew that
This
did the
is-
speakers that are?
This is Pete, the guy who owns, well, the guy
Pete
who
and
owns
Vinny.
But the
Vinny
guys who did
worked
the
with them.
speakers outside?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Vinny Luzio, I think. it is.
Yeah, he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
Wow. That's cool.
He does our sound system.
And he did the sound system for the, and some of the work for the superintendent's kickoff on August 30th. For the.
I'll
for-
go down in history.
So, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. 5.11, be it resolved, the Board of Education approves a contract for health and welfare services with the Katona Lewisboro Union-Free, typo, but that's okay, Union-Free School District for 18 students at the rate of $1,236.99 per student for the 2018-29 school year, and authorizes the Board President and District Clerk to execute the contract. I will move 5.11.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, facilities, have nothing. Financials, can I get a motion to accept 7.1, the claims order report, February 2019?
I'll move the 7.1.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Thank you, Chris.
Notice of future meetings. Wednesday, April 10th, 2019, 7:30 PM. Budget adoption, Seven Bridges student presentation, Marshall High School, right here at the Academic Commons. And then Tuesday, April 23rd, 2019, 8 AM, BOCES Budget Election Education Center Boardroom. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting at 10:13 PM?
I will move.
I will Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.